Let's see if that makes it. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, might be. Oh, look at that. Here we are. About to start. About 1 minute away. Anything you could do to boost audio my way, Lady B, would help. Still pretty quiet. I don't quite know why. What's happening, chat room? Here we go. Look at that. All right. Special late night. It's like 1 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here, and we're gonna be on till 3. Oh, no audio? Really? Can you hear anything? You guys hear anything? Well, needless to say, it is great to be with you guys. I'm in China still until next week. I will be returning with our regular show in a regular environment with our regular. I got robotic right when I started talking. Is that what happened? The nerve of it. I mean, it's just kind of telling, isn't it? Meanwhile, is that better now? Is that better now, Lady B? Because I think we're okay on. Yeah, the Chinese government took control of the show. That's true. Audio on YouTube is solid though. It's been quite a week. Obviously, in the follow up of the ongoing vote count that's going on in several congressional races, a couple of which either have just been called or are on the verge of being called. The rout of Democrats in a sort of a replay of the popular vote that was 2016, with the Senate still remaining in Republican hands, acting as sort of an electoral college count, although arguably less fair than the electoral college in that states with fewer than 1/5 the population of some cities in bigger states having 2 senators. That we won't harp on that too much this time right away. But the idea that the House itself is in a reflection of that kind of Okay, all right. Where the House is reflecting the popular vote angle more so than than the sort of Senate representing the electoral college idea. That vote tied is pretty scary if you're a Republican, and largely a problem of their own making. Because as much as I have, I am open to conversing about different political solutions to all the problems that plague us over the course of steering this giant country of 330 plus million people. And thank you, Hal Vickery, right out of the gate for the Ivanka Trump Defense Fund super chat donation. That as much as I'm open to to sort of a broad consensus of ideas, we do live in a democracy, and the honoring of that democracy does require that one both tolerate and seek to understand political ideas that may be different from their own, and especially ones that are, while different, in earnest, an attempt to solve the actual problem. I do believe that there are two factions of divide in the United States. The greater one being, well, from a media standpoint, I would say the lesser one, but the greater one in terms of volume of human beings, is the idea that there are two sort of groups conservative and liberal, seeing a problem and having a different idea of how to solve that problem, and then the extremities of each side looking in many ways to not even really looking for a solution, but maybe a way to best motivate, manipulate, or push their side or the other side in a direction that would serve them politically. So there is there's a ton of options in the real world conservative to liberal discussion group, and there's of course a lot of noise in the more provocative angles of it, and we have seen, because of the rise of Donald Trump, sort of that angle, that group getting its day in the sun, getting this is a time of Charlottesville neo-Nazis and Proud Boys and the like, fighting against Antifa and the idea that they're that the vocalizations and the machinations of those particular groups sort of drown out in terms of their news value as far as entertainment goes, the genuine conversation that anybody might have, and one need only, I think, point to the bipartisan opioid bill that passed not too long ago that had bipartisan support even before the election. There are baseline bills that are kind of always going through that don't get the headlines for all the things that Mitch McConnell is strategically not allowing to the floor, namely immigration, for example, because of the barbs that it allows Trump to swing around in the election cycle, which, by the way, I believe failed miserably. So let's see. And he was saying in Mississippi, negative ad after negative ad after negative ad. Well, it's true, because Mississippi is one of the races yet to be called. And I would like to say hi to both Carl and Julie in our chat room, our moderators and everybody. And I hope everybody's having a great Thanksgiving. I'm so excited to see you guys. It is going to be a special, kind of relaxed show tonight for a couple of reasons. One is it is a holiday weekend, and I think with all the, that we will cover some very distinct news, not the least of which is the climate report that just came out that was, the State Department and the Trump administration sought to bury, and only, it seems, found a way to draw more attention to it. How come Carl and Julie get all the attention, Billy? Billy, because A, they're always here, and B, as are you too, but I, if you'll notice, their names are in blue, and they help us troll hunt. So there you go, or moderating for us. But I don't let anybody think I love you any less, Billy. I'm, of course, talking to people in the chat room on YouTube, which we have going every single week, even when I am halfway across the world. Or all the way across the world, I guess technically would qualify right now, but we are mega worldwide for a reason. So we'll talk about the environmental report that came out, and for the first time, maybe even, I guess, finding a way to draw attention to this issue in ways that it seems obvious that we should be dealing with beforehand. Obviously, right now, I think the death toll in the California fires is up to 89. We've still got hundreds missing. Finding and identifying those people who are still missing, which no one expects to be less than a couple or 300, even if half of the people are simply missing because they are older and have been relocated to places. We're still talking hundreds of dead. The term campfire, unfortunately, because it caught on early in the process of it, has unfortunately given it a name that makes it easily dismissed. When it turns out that the fire itself may have been caused by PG&E, the electrical company, and some faulty systems they use to regulate power. Over time, we will find out that these quote-unquote environmental blazes that we are having to deal with have now been directly linked to human responsibility, but in the case of the electrical company in California, faulty electrical systems starting the fire. And of course, the case of the last big California fire, a Trump supporting QAnon follower who, like I've said many times, the only thing worse than an end timer is an impatient end timer. And there are those who are tired of waiting for the end of the world to come around and think they can kickstart it. And that was the case with the last ones. So this is, but the fuel obviously created in these circumstances that makes them extraordinary is the simple fact that we are dealing with climate change, drying out the environment, and shifting weather patterns that exaggerate the weather that we are experiencing, as almost as if the Earth tries to heal itself through wiping out a parasite through flashes of heat and cold. In an attempt to heal its environment, that in and of itself, that's a conversation worth having. However, we're going to take a break real quick, and then we'll be back right after this. We're going to start off today with a couple of issues that I personally think as we're sitting around with family and we're sneaking away from everybody and checking our phones and our social media just to get a break. That during that process, we can get caught up in the manipulation that that Facebook allowed to happen, and it turns out materially chose to increase. Beyond being innocent victims and people just trying to make a quick buck on how fast and loose the laws are, it got increasingly more sketchy over the last couple of weeks. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll be back. Let's see. Lady B in my... Yeah, there we go. Let's see. I'm going to roll back and check some of the chat room so I haven't lost you guys. Trump just burned SCOTUS. He's going to resign, I'm pretty sure. Greisicle, there's a very strong chance that this fight with the judiciary is largely just his ignorant flailing. But there is clearly the way he's tried to, discredit the FBI all during this process, knowing that the report is coming, and hoping that people will not take it as seriously if he has undercut them before. And I think he is attempting to do the same thing with the SCOTUS because he thinks, and this is a personality issue with him, Trump seems to think that when the court rules, it rules against him for the same reason that the Women's March existed, in that people have a problem with how he behaves and who he is, and his morals and character, and that these are strikes against that, instead of simply the SCOTUS or the Ninth Circuit recognizing the legal limitations and the poorly constructed legal arguments of the Trump administration every time they try to impose some of their issues. Now, it's funny. We'll talk about this when I come back. But every time they come up with one of these, cockamamie legal issues that the Trump administration gets, from the Muslim ban to transgender bans in the military, all those things. Every time they come up, my mind immediately goes to, what? I know how you could do a legal version of this, but I'm not going to tell you. Because you don't have to be very smart to actually work out. Okay. Cool. Well, there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll start about 10 seconds earlier, 5 seconds early. Okay. Three. Welcome back to the show. This is the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, live from Chongqing in China. Chongqing is an interesting city. First of all, out my window here in the city, it is nothing short. Chongqing, China, where I am literally right now, is nothing short of a Blade Runner-esque type of city. It is sprawling. It is full of skyscrapers, many of them less than 10 years old. There is a shiny new infrastructure going on, mixed very slapdash with the remnants of early, Soviet-style architecture. But the cascade of both the digital economy, which is very big here. People in China increasingly use what's called WeChat, which is sort of their equivalent of Twitter, to pay their bills and buy food and all kinds of stuff using QR codes everywhere. And not just in big stores, but literally you can go up to a food cart and they'll have a QR code on it. You just scan your phone, that pays for your snack, and you're off and walking. But one of the things I'm struck by as I'm walking around is that, you may think that in the United States we're on our phones a lot, but we've got nothing on China in that regard. The volume of people that are on their phones, on their devices, using them, the social media connectivity, and again, is China operates on their own intranet, effectively. They are not necessarily hooked up to the rest of the world. Even within that structure, there are so many people in China that you could end up having a sort of bottomless experience of social media, even without reaching out to the rest of the world, because nearly every service, nearly every kind of personal connection, nearly every product, their version of eBay and slash Amazon is either Alibaba or Taobao, depending on where you want to order stuff from. People can have stuff delivered directly to them. Most of the stuff that we do in the States, where we're like, dang, look what you can do now, they've been doing for about 5 years in China. There are armies of guys on scooters taking packages from everything from convenience stores to electronic stores to people's homes and hotel rooms, dropping stuff off and whizzing about. And even within the context of them having a social media structure that's pretty broad, it has a lot of options as far as their experience. Obviously the Chinese have very tight controls on what they do here, and you can you contrast that, of course, with the presumption of what kind of freedom you would want in a system available in the United States. And you've got Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and then the site that was just shut down temporarily called Gab, which found a new home and a new financial backer that the Tree of Life synagogue shooter was a member of. You've also got Minds, which is sort of, in many ways, sort of Gab light in that regard. It is a place where the right wing started moving after they started getting knocked off of things like Twitter for behavior issues, by the way, not their ideas. Because there's tons of people on Twitter, YouTube, all these other sites who have the exact same ideas and concepts and theories that everyone from Alex Jones to Gavin McInnes, the former Proud Boys head who just stepped down as soon as the FBI labeled them a terrorist group. I think that's what the official label was, or extremist group, I think is what the wording was. But either way, he just stepped down. There are people on all the sites that have those kind of messages. They just are a little more careful or a little more articulate in how they state that message, so as not to cross over the terms of service line. And they don't let their emotions get the best of them, and they somehow manage it a little bit better. Um, then we go to Sheryl Sandberg, who's I think the CEO. I don't know what her role is technically. Facebook's one of the seems in some ways like Google and one of those kind of amorphous. Like, yeah, they have a corporate structure, but what's the day-to-day running like? What's the difference between a president and a CEO in the context of a social media company? I'm sure it's much more defined than it seems, but when you picture Facebook or Google or any of the bigger programs, all you think of are nap chambers and open meeting rooms and badminton board meetings and that kind of stuff. But I think that most of them honestly are run in a much more heavily structured way. But Sandberg, famously writing the book Lean In, about being a female executive, sort of making herself an example of a sort of a short form feminist icon over the last little bit. It turns out that once someone is in that level of power, there's a certain level of Machiavellian control that is necessary, or they see as necessary, or they develop, or they fall into, depending on who that person is. That either will be absorbed as a human, you will absorb it as a human being, or you will fall into it habitually, or you will thrive within it. And most of the people who get caught up in the sort of nastier side of high finance, of billion-dollar companies, they're there because they thrived at it. And Sandberg, is famously, the story is coming out that not only did they take payment from Russia in rubles and pretend that they did not know that they were being paid in rubles for political ads that were not legal within the United States, but she also actively sought to dig up dirt on George Soros and present the anti-Facebook backlash that was coming from legitimate concern over their overreach, their misuse, and their lax security around users' data as some sort of conspiracy, paranoid conspiracy against the organization itself, showing that essentially that absolute power can corrupt absolutely no matter who you are. So the fascinating part for me over the next little bit is, as everybody starts choosing, what they're doing with their social media, and while you're hanging out with your friends, here's what I would recommend. I obviously use Twitter as politically quite a bit. My recommendation for everybody in terms of Facebook is, and a lot of people just don't want to go through the process of stripping down pictures or taking stuff, their account stuff down so they can have it and, keep it, stuff they've loaded over the years that they're afraid they'll lose somehow. I would recommend going forward, as far as Facebook, because I think there's a level of genuine reason for distrust there, is twofold. One is, do not engage in political or political action conversations on Facebook. Not the place for it. Can't trust the source. They're not doing anything to guarantee the source. If you still have it and can't stop lying and say you deleted it last year, many people are. But if you're going to use it for its initial, its initial purpose, which is just, contact with, people from your past from school that you lost track of, or you want to keep track of, or family members. That's it. Personal conversations. Treat it like Thanksgiving. Don't bring up politics or religion. And if it comes up in your feed, click the not interested or swipe it out of the way. Save all your political stuff for either here on YouTube. You can join us here, and we talk about this every weekend, obviously, and you can get through that. But also, I think Twitter is a place where a lot of people can manage to kind of do both at the same time. Watch out for trolls, obviously, in everything, because and it's funny because I have this. There's two kind of versions of trolls, obviously. One being the concerning kind, which is the Russian bots and troll farms that are intentionally dividing people, ratcheting up the conversation, making it harder for people to have a conversation about contentious and difficult issues, by instead of allowing the argument to or the conversation or the debate to happen organically, intentionally manipulating the conversation to make it more harsh than it need be. Super important to recognize when someone else is ratcheting up your conversation or they're trying to infuse take that moment over Thanksgiving. Think about this over the holidays. That it can be a time to either bite your tongue, if not to not respond, but possibly if you feel the need to craft your response in a way that stays within your own ethical boundaries, verbally and emotionally, and how you would handle it if that person were talking to you. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio. By the way, thanks Professor Frank as well, and Billy Hutchins for the super chats. We're almost 200 strong in the chat room. Please join us over there if you're around for the Thanksgiving weekend. We'll be back right after this. I hope. I should probably always put that. There we go. I don't know why this page isn't going to come up all of a sudden. The Sandberg thing. I had an article from the New York Times that I was going to address, but we shall see. Okay. My personal feed is saved for personal links. I think that's wise. And click like. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Anne. Yeah, don't forget to like and thumbs up the page, by the way. Let's see. Let's create it. Let's see. See if I can remember to do this as we go along. Or one. Okay, cool. See, I can't bring up any political things on my Facebook for that exact reason. Yeah, I mean, let's see. Billionaires wearing the same t-shirt every day. Facebook equals plague. Dumped all the right-wingers I knew from Facebook, and so only discuss politics with people I know with similar views. Kind of isolating, but it beats dealing with trolls. Yeah, I don't mind getting into the debate about it. And yes, Professor Frank, 40 days to a Democratic House. My joke about Trump and the primitive tribe. Someone said Facebook banned their share of it because it had violated their policy. That's interesting. I'll use mine to speak to family in Ireland. Just pumpkin spice creamer, courtesy of me. And ask them if they have any sense of shame. And it's always tricky. I put 3 general political things on my Facebook page recently, and one of them was a call for all my friends and family members on there to vote. Yeah, I think, obviously generic, like don't forget to vote stuff is okay. The problem is when the conversation leaves the door open to be artificially manipulated by trolls. And it's so hard not to take the bait. And Lord knows I do it sometimes. You guys have seen me punt some people over the years. And most of the time, I only do it if I'm sure they're a real human being. If they are, if they are fake, or I have a feeling that they are fake, I treat them like catfish. And, I'll sort of toy with the idea of like, oh yeah, you're a real person. Prove to me you're a real person. Let me see. Are you a real person? See, I don't think you're a real person. That usually gets under their skin, and you can tell in their response to that how they feel about it. So, most of my conservative friends simply don't post anymore, and those who get whinier and whinier, then I get rid of them. Yeah, a lot of times the argument it feels the need to be right and that kind of idea. And again, it borders on like how. Okay, thank you. Say again? I'm not getting any feedback, and you're still super quiet coming my way for some reason. I'm not sure why. But it's on the app, it's really low. Okay. That's a little better. There you go. Right on. Welcome back to the House Parks Radio program. Oh, always good to hear from Tom Hartman on Thanksgiving. He's one of one of those people I'm thankful for. I like Tom. And one of the other things I'm thankful for, and there's a lot to be thankful for, not the least of which is the chat room. Like, guys, I just want you to know that for me, this Thanksgiving show is about you guys because, it's a mad scramble to try and get this show on every week, especially when I'm traveling all over the place. And I want you guys to know that you're the reason I do it because um, it's great to be able to hang with you guys. That's all. And I want to make sure that you guys know that. So I really appreciate it. There you go. So this week, one of the other things I think we got to be happy with was Trump picking a fight with the SCOTUS. I shouldn't be surprised by anything that he does, but there's, a couple of areas where, he simply cannot put it down. When he gets called on something, and you guys, you get me misty too if you keep talking like that, chat room. But so Wednesday, Trump picked a fight with the Supreme Court Justice John Roberts, scoring his remark that judges do not serve presidents because he was saying, they've got a bunch of these Obama judges and Roberts specifically released a statement, I think, to the AP. He didn't just say this and it came out in conversation that he had done this. He specifically, made sure that people knew, like, the judiciary itself is not an arm of the Trump administration. And Roberts himself, and it got bad because Ann Coulter was on, on Fox News telling everyone that, basically doing "I told you so" about Justice Roberts, which is hysterical. Okay, By the way, and the left is the one that turns on themselves. Let's just remember that this is one of their returning things. His remarks, this is from Ross, horrifying assault on the independence of the judiciary leaps and bounds worse than the time Barack Obama criticized the Citizens United ruling to the Justice faces at the State of the Union address, which at the time was a huge controversy. More than that, it was profoundly stupid from Trump, as MSNBC's Ari Melber explained. Trump's attack on the Chief Justice adds to his pattern of contempt for the law and impulse to bully independent government officials into giving him what he wants, which would make it easier for someone like Special Counsel Robert Mueller to lay out a case that he's committing obstruction of justice. Donald Trump is literally trying to get his domestic opponents indicted while his lawyers are demanding an end to the probe into the White House, while also installing a staffer as now acting Attorney General, who has criticized the Mueller probe repeatedly and pushing the campaign to oust and potentially prosecute other witnesses, said Melber. All this comes after reports of Trump, of course, tried to fire Bob Mueller as recently as December. Taking it all together, any one of those things could be an element of the crime of obstruction put together. A prosecutor or in our system of Congress could find that all of those things are grounds for much more, which is why Trump's own lawyers, we reported last week thanks to the New York Times, are warning him of impeachment over just some of that, and why any process to hold Trump accountable would wind up before the Supreme Court. It seems like, and I guess this is a strategy that in the positive it worked with, Trump pretending to be John Barron, calling Forbes and insisting he had more net worth than he did, or working with David Pecker at the Inquirer to shield him from the bad news. Sort of these early preemptive strikes. It's a habit he built up over time. Because again, I don't think all this talk of strategy from Trump, these days, I just don't buy it. I think what they are is flail on impulse. I think Trump has a history of getting what he wants as a businessman, and he has two tactics with which he does it. Flattery of those who he thinks has more power than him and he's afraid of, and derision of anyone that he thinks he has control over and is a lesser than. Vladimir Putin, Michael Cohen, as an example. And so between those two strategies, what you have is you've got a situation where Trump is playing out in a governmental and in a media setting, especially with how the news travels, like follows the president's every word, and sort of delivers it with a gravitas that it perhaps doesn't always earn. Um, in it, either out of respect for the office or the hypnosis at the feet of anybody in power, or simply an attempt to temper what they are saying so that they can't be accused of bias later on. That these tactics that Trump used for a long time on a personal level and as a personal businessman for a good long while, which, by the way, were leading him towards a magnificent business flameout. Because most of his business success was coming from The Apprentice, which was winding down in a massive way. As far as ratings, it was never the show that he claims it is. But on almost every front, Trump has his financial holdings, his licensing deals where he wasn't building buildings, he was just branding buildings. That was starting to fail. A lot of it, and that doesn't include the ones that will fail because of the business shenanigans he was doing, but simply just bad business practice or the embarrassment of that brand outliving its worth, scraping it off the front of a building so you can actually sell the units inside because the name itself is embarrassing. And thank you, Robert, in the chat room. That's really awesome. Yeah, you too, Mark. I didn't want you to let that slip by. People in the chat room are super chatting right now, and I greatly appreciate it. Trump has had these two, kind of static style systems, which are kind of born for the Kardashian and social media age. That these two things, these are we are ripe for this kind of manipulation. We are ripe for this kind of self-inflated media figure with a big I would say internet following, but there's an argument by like the illusion of an internet following is more likely the truth. So in the case of the media saying, well, Trump's a master communicator, he's a master manipulator of the media. I don't necessarily think. I think anybody who says that is shortchanging their own part of being the sucker in the circumstance. It's not that he's a master; it's just that you fall for it easily. It's like losing your entire rent to the worst game of 3-card Monte in the world, and standing there and going, "This guy's good. He's really good. I didn't even see that." So let's see. I want to scroll back because I missed some of the conversation that was going on, but I want to make sure they were in there. We're talking a little bit about Hyde Smith in Mississippi, obviously in the chat room is going on. And of course, the correspondence dinner, which won't have a comedian this year, which I think Trump will actually show up for, very possibly. Although, it's curious to me that, he made his calls to the military commanders from Mar-a-Lago, wherein, by the way, he discussed the system by which our missile tracking systems work in an open phone call. Yeah. Meanwhile, remind me again why Hillary's emails were bad. P.S. Ivanka's emails. We'll get to that too. This was a week that just kept on giving as far as that stuff went. And then I want to talk about. We've only got one more break in this block of the show, and I want to discuss a little bit about my experience here in China, insofar as just people and government interaction and that kind of stuff, because it's curious to me. the illusion of what people expect would be happening over here versus what really happens, and and how it contrasts with what we do in the United States or whatever. But let's take a break. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide. Right now, I'm going to take a break. Here we go. This is us taking a break. All right. I think we are. Lady B, we taking a break? I don't hear any music coming my way, but we'll just assume we are. Because that's how it can work. Okay, cool. Heard someone say that 45 wouldn't visit the troops because he was afraid of getting killed. Yeah, that's apparently in the Waypost story. That's what they were saying. His reasoning was, from according to cabinet officials. Trump is getting destroyed left and right on Twitter. He tweets about the White House Press Association. Yeah, Reagan loved having Hollywood in D.C., so he embraced it, and then the rest of the presidents after him went with it due to precedent. I don't know. I mean, Bush 1 and Bush 2, kind of, distanced themselves from Hollywood, and made a big show of it, And I think, Huckabee's kind of bubbaing of the Republican electorate that he managed to, help make that stick, had a lot to do with it. Oh, Amos, you got to go head back home. Well, the guy by Hal, be well. Travel safe, Amos. Be well. And I'd be interested in what you say about the people government in China compared to what I saw when I was in Vietnam 3 years ago. And I'm sure it's very different with Vietnam. Obviously, the rules are different, and the strength of the government is different, too. Guess he didn't get the memo that, unlike himself, these troops are pledged to serve everyone. Yeah. RE the WHPCD, I think it's 10. I think the idea that Trump is so thin-skinned he can't handle is clearly correct. Yeah. I think that was us coming back. Had you for a second. Okay. Trump seems to have been deleting tweets more often now. I've seen a lot of comment on tweets than the original tweet is missing. That might be his staff doing it, or him putting ones up that they're taking down, or ones that they put up for him, which often happens. And they'll we're coming back. Welcome back to the show. So I'm over here in China, and I'm doing a travel show called Explore China with Hal Sparks. Be out early next year, probably March, April, depending on how long they take them to finish editing the episodes and when they all dump and that kind of stuff. Because these days, when it comes to the Amazon Primes and the Netflixes of the world, they tend to put them all out at once, so they have to finish them all before they can do that. So it'll be curious to me to look back at the episodes after we've, my experience being here and what it's like and what will end up, sort of being in them. Because on the one hand, the show is a travel show, so we're showing you the tourist sites and stuff. And then on the other hand, it's a show for people who might live or work here, so might be spending more than a vacation amount of time here. So there's some lifestyle and day to day, morning to night kind of experiences as far as being here that are increasingly becoming part of the show as it evolves, as it, as we do it. And over here, the one thing that you're constantly, struck by, besides the volume of people, is, and the massive interaction matrix that happens amongst people from different, provinces, the cities themselves. Some are so large that they are, Chongqing, the city I'm in right now, is considered, relatively small by Chinese standards. It would be like, Toledo in the United States, or along those lines. It's got 15 million people in it, and it is surrounded it's got almost a wall on one side, just on the other side of the hills here, the mountains. Rows and rows of empty buildings, preparing for, when the one-child policy has ended and people start having, in the last couple of years, have started having 2 kids, or in some cases more, but mostly they would keep it around 2. It seems they encourage that. That those kids are going to grow up, need a place to live, so they're building ahead to kind of think about that. And so they've got their 2050 plan that they're working on. There's some strategic stuff that they're doing, which is impressive, but the material on the ground version of it is a little tough. And it's when you look at the Western media and the Western interaction that we are having, and you compare and contrast it with the social interaction and the media over here, where you have a YouTuber who sang one line of the equivalent of a YouTuber, it's on one of the sites over here, sang one of the lines of the national anthem while she was just singing on her channel, and not mockingly, just in a silly voice, got arrested. And you think about like how serious that is, by comparison. And then at the same time, in the United States, where we are, dealing with a massive obesity problem, and one of our answers to do it is, this article, I think almost 3 articles I saw on HuffPost about how to treat your heavyset friends and relatives when they come visit you. To don't talk about their weight, don't mention if they've lost weight or if they've gained weight or anything like that. The Chinese literally will greet you by saying, "You've gotten fat since the last time I saw you." Like, that's a normal greeting. They'll say that even if you don't even think you have. That's, there is no such thing as PC in the Chinese culture. None whatsoever. Interactions between races are some of the most shocking and peculiar things you can experience. It's nearly jaw-dropping sometimes. And the most common phrase in Chinese, in terms of talking about people from another country, is "Waiguoren," and it is translated as to mean foreigner to everyone. And that's in commonality. If you look up the word foreigner, it'll say "Waiguoren" right now. Well, literally, it is much closer to outsider than it is to foreigner, and that's an important distinction. And it is one that plays out in a lot of Asian countries, if not, certainly not in the like Asian community in the United States or other mixed societies. But within the isolated countries, and they don't just mean white people or black people, they mean other Asians as well. So it's a very specific thing to it's very sort of cultural, ethno-nationalistic kind of thing that's very normal. And yeah, some people in the chat are saying they did build a wall after. Yeah, but that was to keep the Mongols out. That's a totally different thing. And it's certainly not, it wasn't very functional long term. How is it a comment meaning a sign of wealth? You mean the fat reference? No, it is not. It's not a, "Hey, look at you. You put on some weight. You must be eating well." No, it's derogatory. Basically it's like saying, "Oh, you have acne." This is it is just on a societal level. On the one hand, they are much more harsh, and on another hand, they relax into their lives a lot more. And it's curious to watch, the fight between the right and the left about PC and pronouns and those kind of things in the context of and the sort of contrasting it to the Chinese, community over here and how they deal with it. Some of it's just unspoken and they haven't gotten there yet, and in some ways they've just moved past it. And it's a curious aspect, and I'm constantly struck by it everywhere I go. Like, it is something you can't miss. There was an African delegation at one of the outside markets we went to. It's called Broad and Narrow Alley, and it was clearly one of these situations where the Chinese are doing a lot of, um, uh, you know, building in Africa. They're doing a lot of work there, and and this goes to, you know, there is an issue with American imperialism that I think is missed by most of the people who talk about it openly. Who the people who um, deride it the most is that they don't seem to believe that it is they seem to believe that America is the only country that does this. That and that a lot of people, in the American government over the years, rightly or wrongly, and this is certainly worth debating, um, have come at it from a point of view: if we don't go there, the Russians will. If we don't go there, the Chinese will. If we don't go there, the Indians will. It's not like this area is not going to be exploited. It's just who's going to exploit it, and when it's exploited, how will it end up? Will will it be with treaties and some sense of balance, or will it be with like bulldozing of a culture? And so